Good morning. Nice to see everybody. Thanks for having me at Health USA. I would be remiss if I didn't congratulate my Toronto Blue Jays on a Game 7 win. As a proud Canadian here, we've got at least one fan celebrating with me. So it's very nice to be here. We're representing OTO Fertility. We have a booth just over here. We're going to talk about signals to success, the predictive diagnostics in fertility. I'm going to set the stage a little bit just to give a little bit of information about the world of diagnostics when it comes to fertility. 1 in 6 couples globally have been diagnosed as infertile. What that means is that they've been trying for, on average, 6 months if you're over 35, 12 months if you're under 35, and they've been trying on average for 3 years. So to get a diagnosis of infertility, you've been trying on average for 3 years. Then you go see a reproductive endocrinologist, and for 3 years, on average, to get one child. So that process of infertility is 6 years of time. Imagine that. Trying every single month, over and over and over for 6 years without success. Currently, the standard from a care perspective when it comes to a diagnostic is a hormone panel. They'll look at your age and they'll look at your BMI. That's it. So those 3 things are uncontrollable. Age in a linear fashion moving one direction. AMH, again, a hormone that gives an indication in terms of your ovarian reserve, uncontrollable, decreases as you age. BMI, you could argue, as it is controllable. However, as research has shown, as BMI goes up, pregnancy rates drop from a fertility perspective. But as BMI drops, pregnancy rates don't naturally go up. So there's something happening in that mechanism that's controlling that. So as a couple, as you're going through this, feeling like you're on this path with a uncontrollable diagnostic, right? So 1 in 6 couples globally. Of those 1 in 6 couples, 10% there's something medically wrong. PCOS, endometriosis, sperm count, blocked tubes, something to that effect. 30% female factor, age, diminished reserve. 30% male factor, motility, mobility. 30% of every case across the world is unexplained. Imagine showing up at your doctor and they look at you and say, I don't know. Maybe you've been there. Maybe you've had that experience. It's painful. That's 1 in 15 couples globally that are infertile. The doctor looks at them and says, I don't know. That's a huge population of individuals. The other aspect of this, which we haven't even talked about from a diagnostic perspective, is 90% of fertility services globally are privately paid for. And the success rates of treatment globally fall in the range of 1 in 5. So you think about that in terms of it's $12,000 to $15,000 to pay for a cycle, $6,000 from a drug perspective. You're looking at, as a couple going into treatment with success rates at 1 in 5, roughly in the range of $50,000 to $75,000 to get to one child if you're successful on average. So from a diagnostic perspective, you're looking at this and saying, I have uncontrollable metrics moving in a linear fashion. I have costs that are attached to this with no guarantee of success. And I have a percentage of this where people are looking at me saying, I don't know. So that's where we've come from a company perspective, and to say, what can we do to change this? What can we look at from a diagnostic perspective that would give more control back to the couple, better results from a solutions perspective, and less cost overall? A little bit about our history from orbit to ovulation. This technology that is the underpinning of OTO's tech stack started 40 years ago in space medicine. They needed a way to diagnostically assess the macro system of astronauts in space, non-invasively. So looking at your cardiac system, central nervous system, autonomic nervous system, energy supply system, and hormonal regulation, all non-invasively. From there, it migrated into high-level sports and performance, predicting success of athletes, predicting success of teams, predicting injury management and load from a technology perspective. So operating in the NHL, operating in the NFL, operating with professional athletes, because they needed high-level insights into the predictive ability of their performance. So the technology migrated into that, where we became really inclined from a solutions perspective into reproductive health was a research study that was done 10 years ago where they were able to predict complications in pregnancy. By putting on a wearable diagnostic in 3 minutes, they could tell you if you were in your first trimester, the likelihood of incidence of preeclampsia, gestational diabetes, early term birth. And so we said, well, if that's a reality in pregnancy, it's likely that there's potential in reproductive health broadly on the fertility space. So for the last 4 years, we have followed along a group of women going through an IVF cycle, tracking every single metric off of our at-home diagnostic, getting insight into the process that they're going through. You can see some tactical responders. It's not part of our talk today, but I did want to at least mention one of the very interesting groups that we have followed as well is active duty Navy SEALs. So pre, during, and post-deployment. And one of the questions we had is, what are the differences for women going through fertility treatment compared to active duty Navy SEALs? What does their biology look like? So we looked at women showing up day 0. So imagine I've been trying for 3 years. I've been diagnosed as infertile. I'm going to my doctor the first time. What does their physiology look like on day 0? And how does that compare to active duty Navy SEALs? I can tell you, based on the data, that women showing up on day 0 are exponentially more stressed in their biology than active duty Navy SEALs. Their cardiac system, their central nervous system, their autonomic regulation, their energy supply and hormonal regulation are more stressed on day 0 showing up at a clinic than active duty Navy SEALs. It's sobering to think about. Women going through treatment are exponentially more stressed than day 0. Exponentially. It's sobering. And yet often we have a doctor that just looks at you and says, just relax. Unhelpful in that way. Stress regulation and reproduction. For the last 20 to 40 years, success rates have plateaued. As mentioned, our SART rates in the US is 100,000 babies for 500,000 cycles. In Europe, it's 180,000 babies for over 1 million cycles. In Canada, where we are, the success rates are the same. So when we looked at this overall and we tracked all of these metrics, we found that there are 16 predictive metrics off of our diagnostic at-home test that predict the outcome of IVF. So when we look at that, we can give an individual female at home in a 3-minute assessment once a day an 85% probability of success based off their individual biology. 3 times what the current standard is in relation to what the outcome is right now, tying it to actual healthy pregnancies, not just a biological pregnancy, but having a baby. 3 times what the current standard is off of these 16 predictive metrics, all through the different aspects of their macro systems, cardiac system, central nervous, autonomic regulation, hormonal regulation, and energy supply systems. This data now is another level of decision-making when it comes to the individual and when it comes to the doctor deciding on when treatment should happen. You're about to spend $25,000 on a cycle. Is that going to work or not work? How do you optimize that for success now from a solutions perspective? Stress reproduction and regulation has been around for a long time. We took our solution through the FDA approval process in the last 10 years. And not only can we predict the outcome of IVF cycle, we can predict the outcome of treatment if you have an autoimmune condition. Stress biology has been validated in lots of these areas and now into this pregnancy prediction perspective. Looking at this overall from a retrieval perspective, women who get into our optimal zone at an 85% probability on 10,000 cycles would have 7,700 births. The current number would be at 3,000. A huge change overall in both the financial cost, but also the emotional burden for couples as they're going through this. From an efficiency perspective, we not only give that diagnostic back to them individual, but from a solution, We give them daily recommendations with AI to optimize. This is precision medicine done locally from a solutions perspective, returning some of that control back to the couple as they go through this process. So for us, it's a new standard of care integrating into doctors from a clinical perspective, a validated technology done through the FDA process from a diagnostic perspective, and increased success rates and control now back to the couple as they're going through this. Obviously, we talked about women, but from a male factor as well, we've got a diagnostic attached to stress biology for sperm count, mobility, impacted dramatically through lifestyle. And so now a couple going through this can help optimize as they're moving forward in their family building process. So it's an exciting opportunity for us to really impact the world of fertility. A huge number of couples globally being addressed with this. I think, you look at recent birth rates, and 20 years ago it was about 1 in 20, 1 in 25 couples diagnosed infertile. Now it's 1 in 5, 1 in 6 couples. Our birth rates have dropped from an international perspective from replacement level at 2.1 down to 1.2, 1.3 kids per couple. A lot of these things tied to how couples and families are starting to have kids now and the process of fertility. If you're starting on average at 32 and you're 3 years waiting and you get to 35 and then you see your reproductive endocrinologist in 3 years on average and you're 38, having your first child, not to overburden, you're going to start at 39 or 40. This is now a way to decrease time to pregnancy through optimization, moving it down to 6 to 9 months versus 3 years on average. So we're excited about this. We've implemented it in a number of clinics here throughout the US and Canada and Europe. Please come see us at our booth. We'd love to talk further about additional partnerships. And that's it for me from a talk perspective. And I've got time for Q&A if anybody has some questions. So thank you very much. Just yell at me because it's a circle and I don't exactly know if you have a question behind me.
What is the role of male factor?
Yeah, it's a good question. So the question was, what is the role of male factor versus female factor? These things are actually on a continuum, right? And when you think about this from a partner perspective, obviously if you're heteronormative and you're male, female trying to have a couple or having a baby, 1 month it might be female looks great. And 1 month it might be male that looks great. So these things work in this continuum overall. When they look at it from a couple's perspective, the stats are about 30% male, 30% female when it relates to the outcome. In the unexplained cases, it's really hard to put any level. We believe that tied to what we're doing on the diagnostic side and the predictive outcome, we should be able to take that 30% out. But
60. That's all.
So from a top predictor perspective, your ANS regulation. So when it comes to fight, flight versus rest, digest, if you're further along that sympathetic drive from a solutions perspective, it turns off progesterone production, which is a natural mechanism for ovulation. Really does impact egg quality on that point in time. As well, further, some of the other ones they've looked at, your cardiac system distress and energy supply, which is tied to your mitochondrial health. So mitochondrial health is a big one relative to both male factor and female factor as well, and oocyte development. So those are the ones that we looked at that are in there. I've got 30 seconds left for a lightning round. Awesome. Well, thank you very much. Again, we're here. If you have any other questions or comments, love to meet you further, and thank you.